There we go. Perfect. Okay, lovely. So I think that's going to work. Right. Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us this morning. And also a huge thank you to Peter Wharton for giving up his time this morning to talk about something that he's really passionate about. So I want to thank him from everybody from Edge Hill. So Peter is a chartered arboriculturist and is a director of Wharton's Natural Infrastructure Consultancy. So he's going to come and talk to us this morning virtually about kind of the career path that he's taken, and also as well kind of options in terms of working as an arboriculturist and also in ecology. So Peter will share his presentation. And then at the end, there'll be an opportunity for anybody to ask any questions that they may have as well. And I'll keep an eye on those questions, Peter, as well in the chat. So people can, at the end, either pop the questions in the chat or unmute yourselves. It's absolutely fine. It's quite a small group of people. So either way is absolutely fine. Okay, so I will stop talking now and I'll hand over to Peter. So thank you, Peter. It's over to you whenever you're ready.
Great stuff. I can't see anybody based on the fact that I've got two screens set up and for some reason things won't move around. So that's technology at its best, obviously. But yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this today. As you said, yeah, I am quite passionate about this subject, getting people, students and younger students, even from primary school age, involved in the natural environment and seeing it as a career is vitally important to me. And hopefully today's presentation will give you an idea of kind of where we are, I think, as an industry at the moment, what the opportunities are. There's a few videos through it of just things that we see on a day-to-day basis. We're going to be looking at things like culture and team as well, because I think that's really important as you go into an industry. So I'm going to start the presentation. So as I said, yeah, hopefully you can all see this, the front part of this. We're going to look at green infrastructure and professional practice today. So in terms of a company, we consider ourselves to be natural advisors, and we've kind of developed this idea of natural infrastructure, which encompasses everything from green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, basically anything growing or moving, whether it be looking at it as it is now or what we want it to look like in the future. So in terms of content today, it'd be quite useful if anybody can put in the chat box what you want to get from this today. I think that's a really important place to start with. One of the questions I ask a lot of students, particularly in our industry, is whether it's a career or a hobby. And we'll look at that in a bit of detail in a little while. There's going to be 5 kind of key questions just to think about, which I pose to students, young and old, but also other professional practices as well. I ask the same questions each time because I think it's really important to look at these things. Some inspiration, because there's a lot of that going on at the moment. Expectations, what you can expect from today. A bit of an overview about the company, the team, my journey, as Kate said, and the opportunities. The opportunities are huge at the moment. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So we are moving around a little bit, I'm aware of that, but to start off with, we're going to look at 5 big questions, which is, where do you see yourself fitting within the industry or into an industry? How do you intend to get there? So what's your end destination? These can also be a slightly scary kind of thing to look at, particularly when you're in the middle of doing a degree or coming to the end of your degree. I certainly didn't think about these things, and I wish I had done. Do you work best on your own or as part of a team? Again, this is important because we do see within the industry a lot of sole traders setting up and people working alone as opposed to within teams. What's the most important thing for you in a career? And then what is the benefit to the next generation? And I'm sure you'll have heard people talking about this. Again, I'm not really concentrating on my generation. I'm concentrating on your generation and my children's generation because I think they're more important. And the element of what's the most important thing in your career, we had an away day recently and we realised that team is the most important to our people who work here, culture and team. So moving to this career or hobby. This is an open-ended question. This is really important because very often the environmental sector gets seen as the people who get in the way, unfortunately. I'm hoping the tide will be turning, particularly after what's going on in Scotland at the moment. So why are you studying the natural environment? if you're similar to me, I studied it because I care about it. I had an inherent passion. My whole life I've been around the natural environment, whether it be climbing trees as a child. I'm only, well, coming up to 40, but we certainly didn't have PlayStations when I was growing up, or computers. It was very much about getting hands dirty, falling out of trees, getting our knees muddy, and just going and playing outside. And I think that then comes through into our inherent passion for what we do. This is an interesting one in terms of societal shift. And I think more so through COVID. I think there's been many things around COVID which have been real problems. Obviously, people suffering throughout it, our lockdown and what have you. However, the one thing that has run true with everybody is the importance of green space and actually people's kind of natural connection to it now. And I think actually we're on a bit of a cusp of a wave to actually show, well, what is the value of all these different things? And actually, why is it so important instead of creating just concrete jungles? Do we know more now about nature's benefits? In terms of elements such as putting value on things, ecosystem services, biodiversity net gain, we're looking at all of these different components to actually put value on them because they're so important to how we live, work and play. And do you as people really fully understand your role as a professional within the industry and within your future careers? Because actually that's really vital. I certainly came out of university thinking I was going to climb trees forever. I haven't probably climbed more than a handful of trees ever since leaving university in 2004. So actually it's something that is really vitally important to actually understand where you want to be and how you fit within that and how we contain passion and emotion and how we put it into a logical sense. So in terms of inspiration, the conference that's going on at the moment, COP26, massively important. And students, you will be a key part of implementing the changes that they're talking about. I see it that we are just custodians for a short period of time when we're on this planet, but we have an ability to really change lives, to make huge improvements to how we live, work and play. And therefore we have to stand out, we have to grasp the opportunity, and we have to have a common goal. And I'm certainly hoping through COP26, we come up with these common goals based on the fact that the first thing they've discussed and come to agreement on is deforestation. But there's huge evidence about how we can actually change, kind of really alternate this problem we've got with biodiversity. And I think Sir David Attenborough really showed that with his passionate plea and call to all of these different people. So I would urge all of you to kind of get involved with the chat around COP26. I'd also urge you all to look at the videos as things progress and really take a definite key interest in all of that, because ultimately you'll be implementing this change, which is really exciting. But I wonder whether these people who've gone to COP26 started at this place where we start. Because at the moment, it feels like we're in a slightly bad position in terms of the environment and the nature, which means there's no winners. There's no winners for us. There's no winners for biodiversity. There's no winners generally in terms of realizing the true value of these things. And this is where business starts as well as kind of nature and all these different things. So we move into a changing area, and change is actually really good. It's a painful experience as systems change and people change. And I'm hoping over the course of the next few years, we will start to see lots more change, but it will be a painful experience for those people who are actually implementing that change. And then we get into good. And I think we've been in good for quite a while at some point, but good leads to complacency. And complacency is quite a dangerous place to be. And therefore we have to get back up to this inspirational place. And this, I hope, is where COP26 has started, where everybody's opinions are valued. It's certainly something it runs through what we do at Wharton. And everybody will be given time to actually provide those opinions and actually implement the change. The other element that I'm a firm believer in, and I think this is where probably, I'll put it out there, that politicians perhaps haven't taken it quite seriously enough. We call it aura embed. And this is taking ownership, accountability and responsibility, and that be whether our day-to-day lives as students, going into professional practice or personal lives. It's something we've kind of enshrined into our children as well. You take responsibility for your actions. And this is where we've been up until now in terms of probably the environmental issues which we now find ourselves in, where people have blamed each other. There's been a lot of excuses and a massive amount of denial in terms of ultimately global increase in temperature. So it's something that's really important to look at. So in terms of expectations today, please do not leave today with any unanswered questions or thinking, I wish I'd asked that. We have a firm kind of belief in the office that actually no question is a silly question and anybody asks anything. So the only failure is the failure not to participate. There is no embarrassing questions. And one thing we'd like to do and take away from everything is do your best today, which is better than yesterday, but not as good as tomorrow. And try to remove the element of I know. I know cuts out all conversation. So in terms of the company, Wharton Natural Infrastructure Consultants, we have a fairly simple vision, which is to create a future where we live in balance and connected to nature. That could never be more important than what it is now. The discussions that are going on throughout the world is how we connect ourselves and rebalance our connection with nature. And how do we do that? By increasing the understanding of natural infrastructure and guiding the enhancement of the places where we live, work and play. Again, this has never been more important as we go through isolation periods, lockdowns, and actually people's education needs to increase about the importance of nature and how we build upon it within everything we do. So as a company, we're environmental consultants, we're land topographical surveyors, tree and ecology consultancy and landscape architecture. And we're based down in Warwickshire. At the moment, I'm stood in one of our new rooms in our office looking over Coton Court, which is a National Trust area. And it's fantastic to be surrounded by this kind of atmosphere. We've celebrated 13 years in business this year, and I would never have planned this, but we set up 1 month before 2008 recession, which some of you might remember, but probably most people won't remember. But it was the last proper crash in the markets. We now have 14 members of the team, and we have 2 new people starting in November. And each person, kind of the main 9 consultants, have around about 18 live projects at any one time, give or take a few, depending on the time of year. And currently, still our biggest challenge is the opportunity to influence development schemes where most of our work is, and the importance of natural infrastructure. So who do we work with? We work with planners and developers, so any house builder, any developer who we align with, land and estates managers, and then homeowners as well. Our aim is to quickly understand feasibility of a site, maximise the use of space, anticipate what planners and local authority needs, as well as the end users. And we also manage risk of natural infrastructure, so tree risk management. The picture you can see on the right-hand side there, that's the entrance to a new development site for over 10,000 houses over in Cambridgeshire. And if you want to see an exemplar kind of landscape and development scheme, Alconbury Weald is that done by Urban and Civic, who are a huge developer. So there's over 10,000 houses going on there. So we aim to find a balance between commercial, environmental and community requirements. We focus on trees, ecology and habitats as assets rather than constraints. And this is where I go back to that first point that I made, where we're seen as those people who get in the way. We shouldn't be seen as those people who get in the way. It's generally through lack of actually understanding and people not planning things properly that we seem to be getting in the way. So actually understanding feasibility and constraints from the outset of any development is really important. And we provide creative solutions to ensure that people get planning success. We improve the qualities of life and we allow nature to thrive. Ultimately, that will increase the value, whether it be increasing the value of a site financially or just through health and well-being. So we have 4 really key values within the company, which is honesty. It starts at what we do. Everything within this office, we do it and we refer back to this value all the time, whether it be something to come to speak to me about something or us speaking to our clients. We're collaborative. We want to be seen as people who want to work with our clients to achieve a common goal. We're positive in everything we do and innovative. And this was one that came out just last week. We actually had another value, But the guys in the team actually came up with this, and this is really important. It's important for me that the guys take ownership of things, and actually they felt this new value was really important. So as you move out of university, what I find is team is really important, team and culture. So at Wharton, we're a unique blend of people. Everybody has amazing skills and qualities, which all complement one another. I suppose it could be seen as that round peg, square holes kind of scenario, because actually people in our industry generally want to do the best thing, but perhaps have slightly different ways about going about things. So this is the team. This is a general night out for us. We all meet up. This was Ghetto Golf. We had a few drinks. So this was kind of post-COVID, or the main lockdowns, because it was really important to bring everybody back together. And I'm showing you these because actually this is really important as you go through your careers, to find that company or the profession where you feel you fit. And you might have to develop yourself or develop your role to fit with a certain company. And these two videos are just videos of what we expect to see. So this is in the loft of a house. You can see the light, that's a bat flying around. Most people don't get to see these kind of things, but we see them all the time. And then if we go to the next slide, this is the kind of stuff that we're working with and we're designing around. And this one here is another one of bats flying around. These are brown long-eared bats and pipistrelles. And this is the kind of scenarios that we're finding ourselves working in on a daily basis. So things that other people perhaps don't kind of contemplate. We found in this particular loft 85 bats, and we've actually now developed a loft space and designed with an architect something which will actually home those bats in the new building. And then this is part of our team, Hattie and Laura, doing some great crested newt surveys last year. And this is the kind of really getting I suppose, down and dirty with actually doing the physical ecology work. They're both people who have come from other consultancies because they've wanted to work here, and been students prior to that studying ecology or environmental science. One thing we really consider important at Wharton, and I think it's really important that everybody kind of looks at this, is kind of understanding who you are. So once we understand ourselves, then we can understand where we fit perhaps within a company. And everybody in our company undertake DISC profiles, and that's to see, I suppose, where they sit in a certain spectrum. There's no right or wrong answer to any of these things. If you come to work at this company, then this is what happens. It's the process we go through, and we find it really important because everybody gets to see everybody else's DISC profiles. And it allows us to then manage how we communicate with somebody and how we can expect them to respond to us depending on who they are. So we want to get a really good balance between all of these different things, between dominant, influencing, stabilizing, and cautious. If you get too many dominant people, you get a lot of people who just don't listen and they go off in their own direction. If you get a lot of cautious people, obviously less risk is taken. This is the old spectrums from some of our previous staff. And in general terms, we would start to find most consultants working within the kind of INS category, which should be slightly higher. As a director, I suppose it's the dominant part is the red part for me, but perhaps slightly less on certain other areas. But it allows me to see where I sit in those spectrums as well. But it's really important to understand that, and then you can understand where you want to go. So in terms of our company, this was the structure in 2020, April 2020. So obviously there's been a lot of change around the world. Things have happened, different people have made different decisions. But through the course of this year, what I found is the environmental sector has grown. So you're in a great position because you're moving into that environmental sector. So through lockdown, we created 7 new jobs, which I potentially wasn't really thinking of doing at the start of 2020. That's our team now, as of today. So we now have our 15 internal members of the team, 5 external members. And this is where we intend to be by March 23. And that will create another 5 or 6 jobs. And the reason for this is because we see the environmental sector growing. There's a huge opportunity. So I'd encourage all of you to get in contact with the different environmental science companies, different ecology companies, keep your eye out for these things and start working with these people. People like Wharton, the company, we're always looking for people to come and kind of help out with surveys, but we want people who are fully engaged. So in terms of my journey, Kate asked me just to have a quick chat about this, and you'll see some pictures here, which hopefully I'll explain as we go along. So my journey from I'll go from 2004. So I climbed trees as a kid. That's what I loved doing. I had an inherent passion for it, and that's where I saw myself. Once I realised I wasn't going to be a professional rugby player, I decided actually perhaps get a realistic career, or at least a hobby at that time, and carry on climbing trees. So I started contracting when I was 16 years old, and that picture, it's kind of like my my nemesis picture, but that's what I used to look like. And that's how things develop. So we change over time, we kind of reimagine ourselves. And I now have 2 children, I have a successful career, I've done my degree in arboriculture, and I've then gone and done other things that I want to do. So I've kind of gone through a real stage progression. I can honestly say my intention was never to have a company employing 15 people. The company was set up originally for myself, my wife, and my children. And my wife always reminds me of that actually this was never quite the life plan. However, life after university. So these are our offices. And this is what team is about to me. People who can have honest, open discussion. We all put ideas into the pot and we work out which ones are going to work best. We have fun doing it in the office. So we have pizza. I've noticed on the agenda for this conference, over the next few days, you have to create your pizza every day. At the end of every day, we have a pizza oven in the office because we see that as important as well. So at my end of my university degree, I started off surveying, and this can be transferred to ecology, to arboriculture, to landscape, anything like that. So you're generally going to go in as a graduate. So we can see surveyor as a graduate. And you want to go into a company where you know there's going to be progression, where they want to progress you forward and take the right people forward. So I started as a surveyor. I then moved to local government. And in local government, I was a tree officer in the planning department in Birmingham, Oxfordshire, North Warwickshire. And I spent quite a lot of time doing that. I really enjoyed that. There was a different type of pressure. It was a pressure of dealing with members of the public as opposed to dealing with financial constraints. I then went and moved towards being a consultant as an employed consultant. And that was quite an important step for me because it gave me an understanding of other pressures, client pressures, what people expected from me, but also gave me an understanding of financial delivery and how do I hit certain key targets. And it's really important whether you are an ecologist, landscape architect, anybody working within the environmental sector to understand these kind of facets that make up a really good employee. I then started my company, as I said, in 2008, and who would have thought it? 3 or 4 weeks before the financial crash. Fortunately, I was also still employed at the time, so I was working part-time, and I didn't actually take the step to having a fully sole trader without any other financial support until I think it was 2010 when I remortgaged my house. So the day I remortgaged my house, I then said to my wife that I had 4 years to make it completely work, and we just had a young baby as well, so it was really kind of everything in. You then move up as a sole trader as you start to employ people. As I found, you then have to kind of relook at what you're doing. You can't do technical work. As much as I'd love to be doing technical work all the time, I actually now have to manage a team of people and make sure they're okay and make sure they're happy. And then you move into the director seat. And the director seat is completely different. You're really taking an overview of things. But you can move through this within your own company, or you can move through it within other companies. We're seeing it all the time, and we're looking at how our team move and progress into those seats. And this is the fun part of being a director who's fairly open and honest with people. I came into the office, I think that was my birthday a couple of years ago, and they decided to wrap my entire desk up. Bless them. And then these are the nights out. So this is the other fun part of actually doing what we do. And the bits we didn't plan for, and this last 2 years are those bits in their entirety, but it's really important. So the picture here, we normally have a big Christmas party, but this year or last year we couldn't do that. So I went round and dropped hampers off to everybody, and we had another kind of Christmas party. We also had to meet up, but we had to socially distance. So we went out and met outside. That was me delivering the Christmas hampers to our team. Lauren's now on maternity leave, but we were all there. I also had to homeschool, which was another challenge in its entirety. So trying to run a business and homeschool, that was the start of it. We were probably tearing each other's hair out by the end of it. Those 4 slides are when I convinced my children that school had reopened, and I convinced my daughter she had to get into her school uniform to go back to school. It wasn't quite that because the school hadn't reopened, but it seemed funny at the time. I sat in my camper van for months on end, working, keeping in contact with clients. We had our team meetings on Zoom, as we are doing today. And then going back to the whole Christmas thing, we had to reimagine how we did Christmas parties. So we did a murder mystery. Everybody had their hampers and drink and everything else, and we had a great night. Never did I think I'd be sat up with my team at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Zoom call. But we did it, and we had great fun doing it. So also plan for those bits you can't plan for. Oh, what's happened there? Sorry, my screen's just, hopefully you can see that screen.
It's just gone back to your camera share there, Peter. I don't know if there's anything else.
Has it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what's
Okay.
happening. 1 second. This is the joy of technology not quite working how I want them to. Sorry about this, everyone.
All right. Looks like you've got an amazing camper van, by the way.
Yeah, I've sold it actually, annoyingly. Well, not annoyingly, we took a plan to sell it based on the fact that we weren't using it as a camper van anymore. The kids had got a bit too big for it.
Oh.
So we decided to just get a combi van, which is just as nice, actually, I have to say. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully you can see that now.
Not just yet, but I'll let you know if it pops through.
Let me just go to Teams, quickly share my screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's gone again.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry about this, everyone. This is Apple products at their best. What's happening here?
I was going to say there are some questions, and it's up to you if you want to.
Let's go for questions now. If anybody
Questions.
wants to,
Yeah, lovely. So yeah, there's a few kind of just come in. So the first question came from Phoebe. So Phoebe, I think, and Faye, who we've got on the meeting today, both kind of studying ecology and conservation at undergraduate level. So Phoebe's asked, within your team, is there a lot of competition when jobs arise? And she says she's asking because she wants to know how competitive the industry is.
That's a great question, actually. So Phoebe, the industry at this point in time at graduate level is very, very competitive. But saying that, it's also, there's lots of job opportunities out there as well. So what we've seen over the course of the last 12 months particularly is we've never employed more people. The bat season and ecology season over the last 12 months has never been busier, to a point that I think we've over doubled turnover in the first 7 months of this year. So that shows probably where the industry is going, and everybody who I speak to is in exactly the same position. In terms of competitiveness, so we found that externally, when we've had sub-consultants working for us, which we have a lot of contractors working, doing bat surveys through the year, I've probably got 10 who are regularly contacting me, asking me for a job, because they felt engaged completely in what we do. It's one of my things is to basically get everybody feeling like they're part of the team. I don't want them feeling like they're out on a bit of a whim and just coming to do a survey for us. Internally, there is competition for jobs. There's competition because we want the best people and we want people who fit with the business. But nobody's stopped either. So we've got one lady starting with us in 3 weeks' time, another ecologist, which means we've got 3 people on pretty much the same level. I have a feeling in the next 6 months they'll all move up together to become senior ecologists. Okay. Because they're experiencing what they do, and we don't want people to feel like they're stopped. And if they're good, then why should they not move up? So it's a competitive industry. There's lots of opportunity to stand out from the crowd. So just kind of, I would say don't be obsessed by doing lots of volunteering work. It looks good, but there's lots of paid work out there as well. Get the experience and understand and go beyond expectation. I suppose as an employer, what am I interested in? I'm interested that you've got a degree because it shows you've got the ability to learn and study. I'm more interested about your personality and about who you are, because we can teach you everything else. So it's really important that personality comes through in an interview process.
Great advice. And you just, because that was coming on to one of my questions I had actually, because I think no matter what you study and what industry you go into, it's that step from graduation or during study, then going into kind of a paid role. I suppose, is there any kind of advice? You said, don't focus too much on getting volunteering opportunities. What's the really valuable kind of experience that, I suppose, if you think about Faye and Phoebe studying ecology and conservation, how can they get that? Any top tips for getting that foot in the door? How do they approach those organisations, and what's the kind of really valuable experience they could get to help them ready for when they graduate? And that's quite difficult, probably. But.
That's difficult. So I'll go back to another experience. So we advertised a job through lockdown for a project coordinator, and we did it for the first time through an agency. And I'd never seen so many applicants. It showed how many people wanted to move into a different job, because they didn't know anything about our company at the time. So we had 250 people apply for the job. I'm not somebody who's going to read 250 CVs. It's just not going to happen. So each person that came through, within the first few sentences, I think I got it down to about 30 seconds that I could basically decide whether I wanted to employ them or even take them any further, yes or no, for a kind of the next part of the process. So I think make yourself stand out on a page straight away. Give us something really interesting about you, something that relates to the job, and also your ambition. Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years' time? That's what I'm really interested in. We then got people to, and this was to whittle people out themselves. So it was like an elimination process themselves. So we asked them to do a video of why do they want to work for us. And we wanted them to show us that they firstly looked at the website, understood something about what we did, or they could just decide they didn't want to do it because they didn't want to do a video. And we got down to a point, we got Paige, who now has been with us for exactly a year, I think to the day. She came through and she was brilliant. But we went from 200 down to one person within a matter of 2 weeks. And it was quite an important process. So I would say video content is great if you can make yourself stand out. What I found with ecologists and tree people generally is we're technically really good at our job, but we're not particularly great at communicating with other people. So if you can show you can communicate, because eventually you're going to be stood in front of a client, then that is kind of a massive tick in every box. But yeah, ambition is huge.
And is there any kind of experience you particularly look for on a CV? So if it was kind of more of an entry level position, somebody who's maybe recently graduated, is there anything that you'd stand out that make you think, yeah, actually, that's really helpful?
Yeah, so things like through your degrees, kind of going out and almost approaching other consultancies and actually getting the work to show you've done some seasonal ecology. So bats, like the summer months are great for students because you get long summer holidays. You want the money ultimately. So going out and doing kind of newt surveys, shadowing people to do them, but also making sure there is a fair kind of system that you're working towards. Doing bat surveys, bat activity surveys, keeping a log of things, getting involved with your local groups, whether it be like a bat conservation group or CIEM, if there's a local CIEM group, looking at those kind of things and just how you've influenced different key components. I personally quite like it when students have represented the university. So kind of if they're representing them on a certain panel or a group, those kind of things are quite important. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's just showing that you've had a desire to move out of your comfort zone. Would be good advice, I think. It's a shame that Matt couldn't be here actually today, because I think Matt Wall, our principal ecologist, would be a really good person to kind of have a chat with. And also, as an employer, just pick up the phone. We're more than happy to receive emails from people, CVs from people, even if you just want advice of what else could you have a look over the CV. it'd be great if we could work with you, but ultimately, I don't know, for example, I live up in kind of Scotland. I'm not going to be moving down to Warwickshire. Are there any tips? So people like myself and Matt are more than happy to give direction on that.
Amazing, that's brilliant. And I know you're both on LinkedIn as well, aren't you? As well, I know sometimes that's the kind of
spend half my life there.
Yeah.
So become fairly strong on LinkedIn, and also you'll probably hear stories about a lot of different companies. Don't go with any preconceived ideas. You'll make your mind up probably within a couple of days of working somewhere.
Where feels right for you. Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Definitely.
And I also asked Phoebe and Faye as well, just to give a little summary on the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat as well from your side, but I will read them out. So just in terms of what they're potentially thinking about going into when they graduate.
Yes.
So can you see that there? So Phoebe has answered there. She loves mycology, but she also likes data handling, semi-natural environments and scrubland, but she's only in first year, so she's kind of at that career discovery point, but a great opportunity to start thinking, because you can start planning and getting some of that experience. So I suppose, is there any tips that you'd have for Phoebe, or anything worth mentioning, or any, I suppose, organisations or things that you think she could maybe look at to help her kind of understand a little bit more around that area?
Yeah, so I would suggest, and this came out of our big company meeting last week, was that Hattie, who's one of our ecologists, she said she wished she hadn't niched down so quickly. So she's a real bat specialist. She's got Class 2 license in England and Wales. She's also got other dormice licenses, but she's really concentrated on bats, which she felt has confined her slightly. So I think looking at the bigger picture, really getting the knowledge base of botany, newts, all these different things. Looking at what you want to do in terms of the ecology, conservation, and all those kind of things. Looking at botany is really important. Biodiversity net gain is a huge subject, and I would suggest getting onto any biodiversity net gain conference. Start speaking to employers straight away, because I think what we're going to start to see over the period of time is probably housing developers taking on biodiversity net gain specialists, because it's such a vast subject. And I would recommend to all the students, it will be completely out of your own comfort zone, I would have thought, but there's a group called the Land Promoters and Developers Federation, LPDF, which is basically where all the big kind of companies hang out ultimately. It's probably the easiest way of putting it. But what they've done is with Bidwells, they're actually hosting a biodiversity net gain conference, which is kind of unheard of for developers to all be in one place. It's free, I think, or it might be 20 quid maximum. It's in Birmingham, so I would go to anything like that. That you can go to. There's loads of stuff online as well. We actually hosted it with them last time. This time we're not doing any presentations. Where else can you go to? Some of the bigger companies, FCPR or FPCR. Another very good kind of multidisciplinary company. And if you want to look at this kind of urban green space and the biodiversity, find those companies that are dealing with biodiversity net gain on a regular basis.
Perfect, amazing, lovely. Thanks, Pete. That's great. And Faye, some of that will probably apply to Faye as well. But her situation is she's level 6 student in ecology conservation. She's done an internship, which is great, focused in entomology. True passion she wants to pursue is increasing the biodiversity in urban green space. So that's really relevant to what you just said, and how we can improve farming practices. Parents had a landscaping company my whole life, which I worked for. Great, so some experience there. Really interested in art and design as a hobby, which I'd like to pursue through career. Wondering what level of experience would your company and ones like yours require? So I suppose when people come in, it's like, how much experience would you consider, I suppose, before recruiting somebody in?
So this is one of the things, as a student, is probably the biggest question you'll have coming out, is what classes as experience and knowledge. I would, and this is how you kind of write your CV in many ways, you're gaining experience as you're doing your degree. And Faye, you've gained probably more experience than you realise through having your parents who have had a landscape company. So kind of look at where that experience is. You might have done a degree, but your passion started from a fairly young age. It's exactly how I had to do. The amount of people who told me I couldn't have the job that I eventually got after 3 times of trying because I didn't have any experience. And I actually just said to them in the interview, you're asking for all this experience, but somebody's got to give me an opportunity to show I can actually do the job. So I'd be fairly bold in what you're doing, not in a bad way, just as positive as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I would go with that. Look at the level you're going in at. So for us, if we want a graduate or an assistant level, that's exactly what we're looking for. We're not looking for anybody with loads of experience. We're looking with somebody who's got passion for what they want to do and want to learn about the industry ultimately. As we then will take the time to progress you through. And some of the bigger companies will have proper graduate schemes where you're going in and learning all sorts of different things. So if you look at FPCR or Savills or places like that, they will have a proper graduate scheme, and then you're going to learn loads of different disciplines. Mm-hmm. So I'd certainly look at those. In terms of, and don't also, although talking of experience, don't over-egg it either. Except where you, like, I have a lot more respect for people who in an interview don't try and fluff their way through something and just say, quite honestly, I haven't dealt with that in my life, or I have a bit of knowledge about it, but not a massive amount, because then we know where we need to work. So I hope that answers the question in terms of that.
Brilliant. Phoebe's added on as well. She's doing biodiversity this year. Can you describe the industry a little bit more? Also, I'm an adult student, so I've experience in people-facing roles. How much weight with doing a degree 2 would have on my CV or in an interview? So she's wanting to know a little bit more about biodiversity industry, and how much weight that people-facing experience I think would have on a CV.
It's a really difficult one. So the people-facing thing is vitally important to me. We are having to convey complex matters in the most simple format because we have to accept that people are stupid is the ultimate thing. We have to accept that. Still, people see it as a tick box exercise. We want to see it as a really integral part of the planning process. So, and I give one example, which is, so my brother, obviously he's known me all his life, or all of my life. He's older than me. He earns a tremendous amount of money. He's redeveloping his house. He knows exactly what my company do. So he came to me not to ask me to do a job for him, but to ask me if the quote he got from somebody else, one of our competitors, was okay. So that shows where the level of knowledge. He's somebody with some knowledge, and he still didn't know he could get me in to do the work for him. So if we go to everybody else who hasn't got any knowledge, what we've got to do is educate them, and educate them why it's really important to them. Because actually, I wouldn't want to live in a concrete jungle. So in terms of the biodiversity part, it's probably the single biggest discussion point in development now. It has huge implications if you get it wrong in terms of the financial bearings to developers. So we want to make sure we get it right to engage with these developers. There is also, it's obviously going to be mandated. So through the Environment Bill, it will be mandated for 20%, I think it is, minimum net gain across development sites. And each local planning authority will have their own policy on that as well. So in terms of an overall place, it's massive. Learn the metric, I would suggest. Go and work with some landscape architects to work out how do they do things, because it all has to fit in together. And then I suppose immerse yourself with development work projects where it's happened and understand how it's happened and what works. Brilliant. So there's a whole host of different things. But the industry is a growing industry, biodiversity. We've got 2 biodiversity specialists. Brilliant.
That's really reassuring to know, definitely. Perfect. Okay, guys, so just any other questions for Peter, I suppose, that have come in? I see Phoebe's typing, so I'll just give her a second. I know we've also got Nick on as well. So Nikki's actually within our careers team. So Phoebe's just said thank you very much. So Nikki's in our careers team as well and works as an advisor supporting the department. So I'll just give everybody a couple of minutes and see if there's anything else that comes through. But some really, really great advice in there. And really good to see your journey as well, actually, and how successful you can be in a world that, it's something that sometimes I think, you think, actually, I'm really passionate about this, but it's not realistic to build a career within it, but it absolutely is. Yeah, it's
the biggest problem. And we're looking at now we've got people now earning over 40k a year, which doesn't probably seem a massive amount, but it is actually, as an employee, it's quite a fair amount.
It is, yeah.
But there's opportunity to increase that way more.
Yeah.
So it isn't a whole, it will start, and this is and also be really, when you go to an interview process, particularly at graduate level, and this is what I would suggest, is ask them about the Charter for Fair Pay, because we've tried to install a Charter of Fair Pay in oncology. If you go onto our website, you'll see that. And this is about basically not taking the P. That we want students working for us because actually they want to earn some money, but there is a standard, and there has to be a standard of what we pay you. We're not going to be getting you to do surveys for free. So I think it's understanding where do you feel you add value is a really important part of it.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you. And Phoebe's just asked a final question. What weight do masters and PhDs have on the industry? So if that's a consideration, obviously a little bit later on, I know it's difficult to speak for everyone, but generally in your view, what weight would they have?
What weight do they have? For me personally, as an employee, I prefer to see a degree. I think it depends on where you are and what you want to do. I can't think of anything worse than going back to university to study, but I'm nearly 40, so that's not where my life is. But 3 of our ecologists have got masters. So they've done the degree, they've carried on and done a master's. It depends on where you want to go and where you feel that would fit. Personally, I don't know, I suppose I came out with a different level of debt in comparison to students now. I probably just want to be getting into work. But if you are somebody who is academically minded, then go into it. Otherwise, the other option is to get into a job and plan it out with a personal development plan with your employer to actually then allow you the time to go and do your master's. So we've got one chap at the moment, one of our senior consultants, he's done a foundation degree. He wanted to top up to his degree, so he now we've made it happen by giving him the time. So he works 4 days a week now. He can take other time off. He's getting paid while he does his degree, and we're helping fund a small part of it as well. So I would probably get into work first.
Yeah,
that's only my advice.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I suppose it very much, like you say, it depends, doesn't it, which path you want to go down, because if it's a certain role where it doesn't sound like it'll be a barrier to simply have the undergraduate degree to get into the industry. So it's kind of like, actually longer term, is there a role you want to go into where you would need that level of education maybe? And I suppose that's when you start to kind of narrow down on exactly where you want to go longer term. But great to know you can access without needing to kind of do further study. You can. Yeah.
I think it's about the drive of the person. So we've had a lady actually working with us as a seasonal ecologist this summer. And she's got no degree. She's just got an interest. She's really passionate. She turns up to all these different events. She's doing all self-learning, and she's one of the best ecologists I've met at that particular level. So I think it shows it's more about the person.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. And Phoebe's asked, do you do year in industries? So obviously that's something that obviously we obviously encourage our students to do, to take that year in industries. It's something that Wharton's offer. Or do you know, if not, do you know of anybody that would?
Do we? Yeah, we can offer it. We've kind of, through the course of the last 12 months, 18 months, it's been really difficult to take people on. Well, not take people on, but do additional work, because we've been at full capacity. We've been trying to find people at a certain level, and we haven't been able to find them. So we've been really concentrating on the team and actually having to bring the team back together. So introducing 7 new team members over Zoom is quite a tricky business. So I think it's something we will look at in the next 6 months, is actually taking people on, because I think it's important. And also, if we find somebody who's really good, then great, because actually we can get them and hopefully carry them through. Actually get them to want to work with us. There are other companies that will do it. So FPCR, I think, will probably take people on. Savills, probably Arbtech might do. I'm trying to think who else. There's a lot of big companies. So if you just type in ecology, CSA, they'd be another company that probably would do. So there are people out there.
Brilliant, that's great. Nick's just having to hop off for an appointment now. And
right.
also as well, just to mention Phoebe and Faye as well, you know, if Whartons do offer that or any kind of graduate level roles, obviously because we've got the contact, you know, Peter or Matt can share the details with me and we'll advertise it to students. So we'll be able to share those opportunities with our students as well if they come available.
And what I'll do is if I stick my details in the chat.
Oh, lovely, thank you.
If anybody wants a chat or just to understand a bit more about what we do, you want somebody to have a look over your email, or if you just think, actually, do you know what? Because we get probably 20 CVs just thrown into us every year, just people hoping that the time might be right, and you never know. It's one of those things. So yeah, by all means, I'm quite passionate about getting students into the right companies.
Yeah.
It's something that has never been dealt with correctly, I don't think, in terms of that whole what was said earlier on. I think by both Phoebe and Faye, is this whole experience over qualification. How do you get the experience? So just keep on plugging away. Don't get downbeat if the first person says no.
Yeah, it happens.
That's really important.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It's happened to all of us. We've all been there. We all understand the pain.
Yeah, and it often happens for a reason, but you only see that with hindsight.
Yeah, you
So,
do. Yeah.
Amazing, lovely. Oh, thank you so much, Pete. That's been brilliant. Really, really interesting.
Sorry, the presentation didn't completely work out. I'm just trying to work out if there was anything else on it. I don't think there was too much more on it. I think we kind of went through a lot of it. But I'm more than happy to PDF it and share it with you anyway.
Oh, brilliant. Lovely. That'd be great.
You can do whatever you want.
And I'll share the recording as well with the department and anyone that's interested. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you, Faye and Phoebe as well. And Nick, I don't think she's dropped off, but thank you so much. I will stop recording now as well.